and welcome to another edition of Digging Deeper with Brian Hale. Brought to you by Hale Multimedia, website and mobile app development for over 25 years. That's halemultimedia.com. Now listen in and join me online at diggingdeeper.us. A secret.
Because he marched in the stars from before time. It showed me a side of God that I'd not seen. The sky explodes.
The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Night after night they display the knowledge of his glory.
Because this is poetry of terrible beauty.
And that was the trailer to The Star of Bethlehem, which now has its own website and is out on all kinds of distribution channels. And it was kind of tough to find a few months ago when we went to Colorado Springs and showed it to your mom.
Yeah.
And we did finally find it.
Yeah. And it actually had been out several years before the actual Christmas star was available last year. Remember, everybody could see the Christmas star last year.
In the sky.
So this documentary actually has been out there for several years, but we just happened to be exposed to it this year.
Mm-hmm. And so you put together an article here, and it's going to kind of explain why we got into this and how science can prove the birth of Jesus to the day.
Yes, it was so amazing. When we watched this documentary, The Star of Bethlehem, we were amazed at how God charted his whole story in the stars. Mm-hmm. So I laid out just some information presented by Rick Larson. He's the one who did all of the digging for several years. And it's taken from the website BethlehemStar.com. So I didn't take everything off that website, but a lot of it's in there. If you want to see the specific step-by-step process he took, you can always go directly to BethlehemStar.com to get all of it. But I just kind of grabbed the main points.
Okay, so let's set the stage.
Yeah.
If the star was a real historical event, why are we learning of the evidence only now? Why isn't it common knowledge?
Well, so you have to go way back. Johannes Kepler paved the way for discovery of the star. He was the one who had the math brain. He puzzled out the math which drives the heavens. He even used his formula to search for the star. Well, thanks to Kepler, we now have the ability to locate celestial objects with great precision at any point in history and from any viewing point.
The Bible recounts that Herod learned of the Messiah's birth from astronomers who had seen the Star of Bethlehem. He tried to kill the child, so obviously the Bible records that Herod was alive at Jesus' birth.
Yes, so the Jewish historian Flavius Josephus' manuscript supports the inference that Herod died in 1 BC. So, counting back and knowing this, since Herod died shortly after Christ's birth, their investigation turned to the skies of 3 and 2 BC. So they backed it up just enough to start looking for signs in the sky.
Okay, so using Kepler's calculations, we can create a computer model of the universe and in minutes produce thousands of sky maps?
Yeah, that's the cool part. That's something that Kepler didn't have.
What?
He tried to calculate back.
Wow.
But because he didn't have the computer, it was pretty tough.
So we can animate the universe in real time at any speed when we choose and make months pass in moments or wind back the clock?
Yeah, isn't that cool?
Yeah, that's really cool. So does that mean we can view the sky precisely as it moved over Jerusalem 2,000 years ago?
Yes, because the stars do not change. Isn't that amazing?
The stars and the Bible. Even if you're not of a traditional Christian or Jewish faith, you might feel a bit uneasy searching for signs in the stars. many people have concluded that there isn't anything to astrology, or if there is something to it, it's something they want no part of. So, are we doing astrology here?
All right, so let's define. Astrology. That's the study of the movements and relative positions of celestial bodies interpreted as having an influence on human affairs and the natural world. Whereas astronomy is the study of the sun, moon, and stars and planets and other objects and that phenomena in space. Has nothing to do with an influence on what's going on here.
In Job 31, 26 through 28, you have written here that if I have regarded the sun in its radiance or the moon moving in splendor, so that my heart was secretly enticed and my hand offered them a kiss of homage, then these also would be sins to be judged, for I would have been unfaithful to God on high.
Yes. So astrology assumes that the stars are causes of earthly events, but the Bible speaks of it. It assumes that they can be messages about earthly events. There's a big difference between a sign and an active agent. This is the difference between astrology and astronomy.
Oh, what's the bottom line?
The bottom line on the Bible and the stars is we can look to the stars for signs from God, but we are not to revere the stars themselves.
Ah. So who are these magi?
Well, the word magi, which is sometimes translated as wise men, is the root from which we get our word magic. But this doesn't mean that they're all magicians in the present sense of the word. Nebuchadnezzar made the Jewish prophet Daniel chief magi of his court. When Daniel was able to interpret a dream, the others could not.
Philo, a Jewish philosopher, wrote in praise of an Eastern school of magi and their great learning and understanding of the natural world. This school may have descended from the Babylonian magi of Daniel's day. Matthew does report that the wise men were from the east, and Babylon is east of Judea. So it is possible the wise men were of this prestigious Eastern school. What are the 9 points of Christ's star?
Yes. So in order to figure out what is the Star of Bethlehem, we need to take all of the proof from the Bible and make that a qualification for that star. So he found 9 points of reference that will qualify the right star.
9 points
Right.
of reference.
Yes.
Matthew 2, 1 and 2 says, Now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him.
So in this verse, the Magi's question gives us 3 points for our list of qualifications for the star. Whatever happened in the sky indicated, number 1, birth, 2, kingship, and 3, Jews. The Greek text here says that the star was enatole, meaning they saw his star rising in the east. So number 4, it must rise in the east, like most other stars.
Matthew 2, 3. When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him.
Both ancient historians and the Bible make it clear that the Jews of this period expected a new Jewish ruler to arise based upon Jewish prophecy. And it was also accepted that the stars could announce such an arrival.
Matthew 2, 4 through 6. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Christ was to be born. In Bethlehem in Judea, they replied, for this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For out of you will come a ruler who will be the shepherd of my people Israel.
Herod took the Magi's message as factual and consulted the Jewish experts about the location of the birth. The fateful verse in the book of Micah, which is quoted to Herod by the Jewish experts, soon resulted in the death of many little boys in Bethlehem.
Matthew 2:7. Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared.
So now we have 2 more qualifications for the star. Number 5, it appeared at an exact time. And number 6, Herod didn't know when it appeared. He had to ask.
Matthew 2, 8 and 9. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and make a careful search for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me, so that I, too, may go and worship him." After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen in the east went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was.
And now we have the last 3 qualifications for the star in Matthew 2, 8 and 9. Number 7, it endured over a considerable period of time. The Magi saw it, perhaps from Babylon, traveled to Judea, and saw it still. Number 8, it went ahead of them as they traveled from Jerusalem to Bethlehem. You might not realize that this doesn't mean the star was needed to guide the travelers to Bethlehem. Bethlehem was just 5 miles down the road.
Oh.
The star appears ahead of them as they trek south, not so much as to guide them further, but as confirmation of the signs they had seen.
The star stopped!
And the star stopped.
Can a star do that?
It can.
Okay, I remember this in the movie.
Yes.
This is exciting scientifically. If you're into the stars, this is going to amaze you.
Yes.
So how did the star stop? Are you going to cover that in this article?
Yes, it
All
is
right.
covered in this.
Nice. So what was the star?
With the 9 qualifications, we can disqualify what the star was not. So, if any of the 9 biblical features of the star is absent, then the phenomenon we are examining may be interesting, but it can't be the biblical star.
Okay, let's knock them out.
Okay.
It's not a meteor.
It's not a meteor.
Yeah, because although dramatic, a meteor would fail most of the qualifications. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't rise in the east, and it wouldn't last long enough for the Magi to notice its significance, let alone follow it all those miles.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, and it's not a comet. Did you know at the time in history, comets were regarded as omens of doom and destruction? The very opposite of good tidings. I mean, God's God, and he could use that, but why would he, right? Mm-hmm. A bigger problem is that there did not appear to have been any comets in 3 or 2 BC. And finally, comets are obvious things, so Herod would have noticed.
It's not a nova. A nova, or exploding star, appears suddenly at a point of time, and then endures over time, rises in the east like other stars, and can be spectacular. However, none appears in the ancient records for this time period. And like comets, a nova is an obvious thing. Mm-hmm. So what's left?
Biblical qualification number 6. Herod had to ask when the star appeared is a powerful clue. Anyone can glance up and see planets and stars, but Herod didn't know of it. A reasonable hypothesis is that the star must have been something in the normal night sky which was striking when explained.
Like the starry dance?
Yes, that's what he calls it, the starry dance.
Our process of elimination has knocked out meteors, comets, and nova as candidates. That leaves planets.
Right. So what's the king planet?
How about Jupiter?
Jupiter, the name of the greatest god of Roman mythology, and the name of the largest planet of the solar system. Jupiter has been known from ages old to the present as the king planet. In September of 3 BC, at the time of the Jewish New Year,
Rosh Hashanah.
Jupiter began movements that satisfy all 9 identifying characteristics of the star. Jupiter came into close conjunction with the star Regulus. Regulus takes its name from the root word which yields our word regal. The Babylonians called Regulus Sharu, which means king, and the Romans called Regulus Rex, which also means king. So to start things at the beginning of the new Jewish year, the planet of kings met the star of kings.
Jupiter glides slowly past Regulus about every 12 years. So that event in and of itself wasn't that significant.
No, and it wouldn't have been noticeable.
And in ancient times, Planets like Jupiter were considered wandering stars. Each night, Jupiter rises in the east, satisfying the second star qualification. Each night, it appears to be slightly farther east in the field of fixed stars. All of the planets move like this. But the wandering stars exhibit another stranger motion. Periodically, they appear to reverse course and move backward through the other stars because we watch the planets from a moving platform, Earth, hurtling around the sun in its own orbit. Astronomers call this optical effect retrograde motion. So there you go. That explained what I was inferring earlier. And how does a star reverse directions? It's retrograde motion. That was cool when we learned that.
Yes, yes. So in 3 and 2 BC, Jupiter's retrograde wandering would have called for our Magi's full attention. After Jupiter and Regulus had their kingly encounter, Jupiter continued on its path through the star field, but then it entered retrograde. It changed its mind and headed back to Regulus for a second conjunction. After the second pass, it reversed course again for yet a third rendezvous with Regulus, a triple conjunction. A triple pass like this is more rare. Over a period of months, our watching Magi would have seen the planet of kings dance out a halo above the star of kings, a coronation.
Sounds like a birth of a king.
Yeah.
Jupiter's interesting behavior may explain the kingly aspect of the star. But there are 9 qualifications of the Star of Bethlehem. Many still are missing. How did Jupiter's movement relate to the Jewish nation? Where is an indication of a birth?
Jewish prophecy states that the tribe of Judah will bring forth the Messiah, and the symbol of Judah's tribe is the lion.
Genesis 49, 9 and 10. You are a lion's cub, O Judah. You return from the prey, my son. Like a lion he crouches and lies down, like a lioness who dares to rouse him. The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from beneath his feet, until he comes to whom it belongs, and the obedience of the nations is his.
The triple conjunction occurred within the constellation of Leo, the lion.
Oh, wow.
Gives me goosebumps every time.
But God gave us more than the Magi had. In Revelation chapter 12, John describes a life and death drama played out in the sky, the birth of a king. Revelation 12, 1 through 5.
A great and wondrous sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth. Then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns on his head. His tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to the earth. The dragon stood in front of the woman who was about to give birth so that he might devour her child the moment it was born. She gave birth to a son, a male child, who will rule all the nations with an iron scepter. Revelation 12, 1 through 5.
Applying this to the gospel story, the woman would represent Mary, the dragon would be Herod, and the new moon is baby Jesus. Looking back to the 3 BC sky, we see more.
As Jupiter was beginning the coronation of Regulus, another startling symbol rose in the sky. The constellation which rises in the east behind Leo is Virgo, the Virgin. When Jupiter and Regulus were first meeting, she rose clothed in the sun, and as John said, the moon was at her feet. It was a new moon, symbolically birthed at the feet of the Virgin. But even this is not the whole story. These symbols could indicate a birth, but if they were interpreted to indicate the time of conception, the beginning of a human life, might there be something interesting in the sky 9 months later? Indeed, in June of 2 BC, Jupiter continued the pageantry. 2 BC.
By the following June, Jupiter had finished crowning Regulus. The planet of kings traveled on through the star field toward another spectacular rendezvous, this time with Venus, the mother planet. Jupiter appeared to join Venus. The planets could not be distinguished with the naked eye. Jupiter completed this step of the starry dance as it was setting in the west. That evening, our Babylonian magi would have seen the spectacle of their career while facing toward Judea.
To qualify as the star, Jupiter would have to have been ahead of the Magi as they trekked south from Jerusalem to Bethlehem. Sure enough, in December of 2 BC, if the Magi looked south in the wee hours, there hung the planet of kings over the city of the Messiah's birth. All but one of the 9 biblical qualifications for the star have now been plausibly satisfied, but the 9th qualification would require that Jupiter stop over Bethlehem. How could a planet do that? And how did Jupiter do that?
We talked about it earlier.
Right?
To stop a star. The sky moves above Earth at half the speed of the hour hand on a common clock. The hour hand. Its movement is imperceptible to the naked eye. So if all stars are always stopped, what can Matthew have meant? Perhaps you have already anticipated the key to this final mystery. Retrograde motion.
So here's the bang.
Here we go.
On December 25th of 2 BC, as it entered retrograde, Jupiter reached full stop in its travel through the fixed stars. Magi viewing from Jerusalem would have seen it stop in the sky above the little town of Bethlehem.
Amazing.
Amazing. The first Christmas celebration was on December 25th.
We suggest you take a couple of hours to watch this movie. There's more to this story that we've covered here tonight, and we don't want you to miss it. This is serious business. We've pinpointed it down to the very day, and it happens to be your birthday, darling.
Yes.
Not to take anything away from the birth of Christ.
So even though Jesus wasn't born on December 25th, it was the first Christmas celebration.
Isaiah 9:6. For a child will be born to us, a son will be given to us, and the government will rest on his shoulder. And his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, and Prince of Peace. Merry Christmas, everyone.
And God bless.
And that does it for another edition of Digging Deeper. Visit our website to catch this podcast and many others anytime. You can also watch our live TV network, browse our on-demand content, read our controversial articles, or sign up if you feel led to join the cause for defending our Constitution. It's all on diggingdeeper.us. We appreciate you listening, and remember, visit diggingdeeper.us to learn more about what we're doing to bring truth to light.